Did you know that families in Arkansas working for minimum wage make less than $18,000 a year?
Good afternoon. Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Monday, November the 5th, the day before Election Day in the United States, and people are seemingly, like I am, hoping that it'll soon be over. People are standing in a line with umbrellas today at the Pulaski County early voting site downtown, wanting to get their votes in today. By all signs, we're going to have a big midterm turnout if tomorrow's voting is heavy as well. If you want to go by the polls, they tend to say that the Democrats will take the majority in the House, but perhaps lose ground in the U.S. Senate. But these are not guarantees. That's the way they're trending, but there's sometimes surprises. In Arkansas, there's some hope for some small gains by Democrats in the legislature, but even that seems greatly in doubt, particularly because Donald Trump remains so important here. The last-minute advertising has been even dirtier, more dishonest, and fiercer than that which came before it. Several networks are killing some ads. Donald Trump has tried to buy dishonest ads blaming Democrats for a immigrants' crime when in fact he was somebody who was brought into the country by Republicans. Locally, French Hill's advertising trying to make out Clark Tucker some kind of promoter of criminal gangs is one of the worst on the air, but the Republican State Leadership Committee's advertising on TV and radio trying to smear Courtney Goodson is probably the worst of the season. You sometimes hope that they're so ugly that even people who aren't familiar with the races will say, gee, this just doesn't sound right. Nobody could be this bad. However, that $1 million may work in Courtney Goodson's race. We shall see. Late development last week was that a residency challenge of Republican State Representative Laurie Rushing failed, although she's been claiming an address on a house that she hadn't lived in for more than a year. After she and her husband separated, she said she was a resident of the district and proved it to the satisfaction of the judge. However, it came out in the trial that to do so, she produced a voter ID to vote this year that gave a bogus address. She didn't live there anymore. So much for voter fraud, so much for the value of voter ID. Laurie Rushing, the Republican, was able to vote anyway. Well, also an interesting political story from Blue Hog Report, who took a look at some incumbent state legislators who happen to be Republican and found that they had almost no contribution to their campaigns from anybody who actually lived in their district. 3 in the case of Marcus Richmond, the House Majority Leader, and 2 of them were his mother-in-law and father-in-law. All his money came from PACs, corporate PACs. The supposed ethics amendment passed in 2014 has shifted the money giving into the hands of corporate PACs. Incumbent representatives particularly don't need to raise money anymore. The PACs just pour it in on them, and it's all special interest money, and they tend to reward people who vote the way they like. Continuing to have news on the Little Rock School District front, Johnny Key, the state education commissioner, wants to be able to fire Little Rock school teachers at will because he wants to blame them for the problems of poor schools when it's really the problem of the poor families that send their children there for the most part. He issued a whiny statement late Friday blaming the union for putting out misinformation about what he's done. Well, he didn't cite anything that was wrong. He just really doesn't like criticism, and he wants to be able to fire teachers, and he wants to break the Little Rock School Union. But I urge you to take a look at arkansasblog.com today and read 4 letters from parents and teachers in the Little Rock School District, including some with direct experience with these so-called failing schools, and they really tell some heartbreaking, heart-rending, and successful stories about teachers working against great odds in schools to do great things for kids. That's the truth about the Little Rock schools. You won't hear it from Johnny Key because his political agenda is set by the Waltons, and they want to break the union, and it's that simple. The State Correction Board met today to talk about a variety of things, including K2, the synthetic drug that is responsible for perhaps 2 deaths a month, accidental overdose in the prisons. Drugs snuck in, probably by employees, is a trade to make money for low-paid guards. Also talked about the continuing rise in prison population in the state, despite efforts to divert people away from prisons and into alternative places. Arkansas is looking at a 10% prison gain over the next 10 years, a consultant says. This is even more money that will be necessary for prisons, more money to take away from Asa Hutchinson's plan to cut the income tax on wealthy people. Little Rock Police Chief Kenton Buckner, hired last week to take over in Syracuse, gave his first TV interview up there and bragged about what a great job he'd done fighting crime. You don't have to look far on the web to find that Little Rock is still considered one of the most dangerous countries in the city, and dangerous cities in the country, although indeed our homicide rate has dropped some this year, and so there's that to be grateful for, but it's the overall crime rate that really counts, and if you, like me, have had your car burgled on the street more times than you can count, you don't think crime is just yet quite at a standstill. Also, city leaders continue to show no interest in a blockbuster of a Washington Post story about dozens and dozens of police improprieties and abuses by the police force over a period of years, particularly toward minority people by the majority white force. Maybe someday the new mayor will do something about that. Sad news to report today about a famous Arkansan, Donna Axum Whitworth, who was Arkansas's first woman to rise to the Miss America title in 1964, died in Fort Worth. She was 76 years old. Here's a report from West Little Rock. A bobcat that's been seen out in the Chenal Valley region is on the prowl again, the neighbors say on one of the social websites that keeps up with neighborhood doing. And finally, just my usual message, resist, and there's an easy way to do it. Vote. If you haven't yet, get out there. Tomorrow's your last chance. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back tomorrow.
I'm Amy. I'm a school custodian in Russellville. I'm a single mom and I'm proud to work hard for my family. I need to provide for them. I need to make sure that they're cared for and loved and they have everything that they need. Did you know that families in Arkansas working for minimum wage make less than $18,000 a year? That's barely enough to put food on the table, much less pay for rent and other basics. Raising the minimum wage may seem like a small deal, but it makes a big impact on families like mine.